So this lecture will be dealing with addiction, and so to begin with, we have brain functions which are not really isolated or not really localized to one region of the brain as we've been learning so far. When it comes to addiction, things get slightly more complicated. There is a larger scale of control of brain functions. Brain functions are more cortical or more thalamocortical or more cortex wide and more spread around, and there are various systems which are brain wide and they have various multiple effects. One such example could be the system which elicits sleep, and this is when it comes to addiction also, that there are different diffused modulatory systems within our brain, such as the acetylcholinergic system, the noradrenergic system, the dopaminergic system. All these systems, they modulate different types of behaviors, and they are very widespread, and they mostly arise from the brain stem, and each of them has a core which consists of several thousand neurons, while at the same time they're modulating a vast number of neurons which are almost more than 100,000 in number. So one of the first types of system that we have is the noradrenergic system, and it is modulated by the neurotransmitter norepinephrine, and it spreads out. Its core lies at the locus coeruleus, and it's responsible for a lot of things: attention, sleep, arousal, pain, reward, mood swings, etc. And this means that it controls a lot of things, and it is usually activated by new stimulus, and there is also the raphe nucleus is involved in this. Then we have the cholinergic system, which is mostly implicated in Alzheimer's disease and hippocampus, and this is where its core lies. And then we also have the dopaminergic system, which has its core at the lateral tegmental area, and it innervates the frontal cortex, and it is mostly known as the reward system. And in one such experiment where they found out the implication of the dopaminergic system was when they would have a light flash whenever food reward was given to the monkey through a little pipe. So they would see neural activity, they would be recording neural activity, and whenever the light would flash and whenever the food was given simultaneously at the same time, this monkey's neurons, particular neurons, would fire. Later they observed when the food reward was removed and when only the light was firing, the same neural activity was again found. And then we have drugs such as LSD. LSD acts against the serotonergic system, and it acts as an agonist for this system, and it reduces or it stops the uptake of serotonin. So when serotonin is released into the synaptic cleft, we know that this serotonin is usually taken up and the reuptake happens. This is what the LSD drug stops. But unfortunately, LSD, or fortunately for research purposes, it was stopped because it was a strong stimulant and a psychedelic substance, because of which research into it also couldn't proceed much, because a lot of paperwork, a lot of clearance has to be taken. Then we have cocaine and amphetamines, and they stimulate the dopamine and the noradrenergic systems, and they block the reuptake of neurotransmitters, and unlike LSD, they even stimulate the release of neurotransmitters, and they control the sympathometric system, because of which you feel euphoria and everything, and it short circuits the reward pathways. So ideally, if something would require you to release dopamine by doing some sort of hard work, like say exercise, work, or doing some sort of hard work, that is short circuited, because just through this drug you can do the same, you can achieve exactly the same thing that you would ideally achieve but from another action. And in one such crazy study, what happened is Parkinson's patients were given dopamine and the dopamine antagonist, and later it was found that a crucial section of these patients developed serious gambling problems, and therefore these multiple drugs have multiple effects. But what really makes drugs addictive? So for that we need to understand there are two systems in the body, which is the liking system and which is the wanting system. The liking system is usually activated by endogenous opioids, while the wanting system actually craves and leads to cravings, and these pathways interact a lot between them, and that is when an addiction happens, wherein a liking can turn into wanting. So dopamine is released when these drugs bind to it. For instance, say cocaine or amphetamine when we talked about. And there is one more particular organ which is also implicated in addiction, which is the insula. And it has been found in studies that when nicotine addictions or people who smoke a lot, when their insula was damaged, it was easier for them to get over their addiction as compared to patients who did not receive lesioning in the insula. And we also at the same time have a lot of hedonistic behavior. So we have the yum and the behavior. The yum behavior is when you eat something sweet and there's a certain way that you react, while you have the behavior when you eat something and you taste something which you don't like, say something which is bitter. And these pathways, the hedonistic and pathways and these behaviors can be modulated by drugs such as morphine. So morphine increases, say for instance, the sweetness that you perceive from after eating a sweet substance, whereas bitter objects which are bitter and bring out or elicit behavior, they are reduced, which means something which is actually bitter at say a scale of 10 might seem bitter to you at a scale of 5, 4 or even less because of these drugs such as morphine. And then you also have behavioral addiction. So addiction doesn't always have to be substance related. Behavioral addiction wherein you could be addicted to something as straightforward as say eating, compulsive eating, kleptomania, wherein you steal compulsively without even thinking of the connotations, wherein you lose sense of the idea that such as the cingulate cortex which is involved in computing the utility of a certain action that you have, wherein that is misfiring because this behavioral addiction that you have. Even things like sex, which leads to release of high amount of endorphins, and a lot of working out can also do this. And even it has been even shown that romantic behavior can also become an addiction, and it has been seen that romantic behavior, when patients are shown photos of their loved ones who's activating the same region which is involved in addictive behaviors. So one such study from 2005, the authors even went ahead to say that romance is nothing but just a craving for sex, and this in many ways implies that addiction is a very far-fetched or is a very widespread phenomena that can have widespread implications, and it doesn't really necessarily is not really elicited by a subpopulation of neurons. They're elicited by a wide variety of systems which control and which have far-reaching activities all across the brain and don't really focus on one particular organ or one particular part of the brain. And this is made evident by various systems that we have, such as cholinergic, dopaminergic, noradrenergic, serotonergic neurons. And addiction is a very widespread phenomenon, and it has affected lots of people. We have the opioid crisis in US, wherein patients are administered the drug called oxycodone, which is the equivalent of morphine, which is way more potent, and it has an immediate release and a delayed release response. And the dosage that is required and the effect that is had is almost comparable to almost the same amount of doses that one would take in morphine. Morphine, as you know, is highly addictive. It is banned right now, and it is rarely used for medicinal purposes unless and until very necessary because of its highly addictive nature. So addiction in general is basically just nothing but a short-circuiting of a reward pathway wherein we are not able to compute properly because the very parts of the brain which compute something, certain things, the core that we discussed before, is compromised, and because of which addiction arises. So thank you for this lecture.